Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my guests are Jennifer Jones, the Executive Director of Apparo Academy. Apparo Academy is a nonprofit, faith-based, specialized early intervention and education program designed to teach children ages 6 weeks to 7 years of age in an inclusive, integrated setting. Apparo means to make ready, and that's our desire. My other guest is the chairman of Apparo's board, my good friend John Cates. John is the president of Meybohm Real Estate, which is one of the largest real estate development management and brokerage companies in the Southeast. So, guys, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here. And first off, I'm so excited to have you guys because the success that you've had with the Apparo Academy is really, we were talking before coming on air, it just shows the strength of our community, the ability to rally around this school. And so, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about Apparo, and I do want you to give the story because your diligence towards getting this thing off the ground was amazing to watch.
Well, thank you. I kind of ride on the skirt tails of God, so I can't take all the credit. Probably about 10 to 15 years ago is when I first kind of had the idea for a school. And it's kind of funny, even today when I talk to people, they'll say, I remember you talking about this 15 years ago. And I'm like, really? That long ago? It just seems like time has flown. But as a speech pathologist, I had a private practice. And when I first started doing therapy, I could see kids 5 days a week, an hour every day. And those kids got better. They got off my caseload, and those kids are graduating from college now and have careers, and they never even remember going to speech therapy when they were kids. And probably about 8 years ago, I started looking at the kids I was treating going, are these kids going to have that same opportunity to go to college? Because the payers decided that they could only have therapy once a week for 30 minutes. It wasn't that they didn't need the therapy. It was just they said, well, we're only going to pay you for once a week. And so because the payers made that decision, it was the children who were suffering. Yeah. And as a therapist, I said, that's just not okay. We need to do more. And so, I started a nonprofit in 2006 to raise money to pay for more therapy. But you can only pay for so much therapy. It has to be integrated into your daily life. It has to be integrated during school or at home or somewhere where you're doing it all the time so that you can really make the gains. So I said, maybe we just need to have a school. And I kind of shelved it for a while, and then God kept tapping me on the shoulder and said, it's time to do this school. And I'm like, I don't know how to start a school. So just like anyone who wants to start something new, I started researching it and found other programs in other states and went and visited them and went back to my board. And I said, hey, what do y'all think about us starting a school? And they said, let's do it. And then I talked to some people in town who said, you don't have the right kind of board. You need to change your board. You need a board that is going to help you run a school, not just a programming board. So then I started talking to other people and brought John Stewart into the picture. And John Cates came because John and Stewart invited him. And at that point, when he came on board, we had been looking at property. And we looked at properties for over a year. And we landed upon a piece of property on Skinner Mill Road that was an old daycare. And we were like, this was a gift, and basically gutted it in 2018 and managed to open our doors in 2019 with local help, just giving us the funding we needed from some grants in town, like the Knox Foundation, who said, hey, I believe in what you're doing, and I know we need it, and here's some money to help you get started with a down payment. And then we started raising money for doing the renovations. And that's kind of the quick story, because it's definitely a lot more involved. But
no, it's amazing. It's hard for me to believe. I've been out of office almost 8 years now. But I remember when I was in office, you coming to and talking to me about this and your dream and your vision. But that's to me, that's part of good leadership, is a willingness to take a leap of faith. And you really, and your board and everybody involved, took that leap of faith.
Yeah, you make your own plans, right? And you think you've got the great plan and you've laid it out. And, I was going to sell my private practice and put some money in the bank just in case this thing didn't work out. And God said, no, that's not what you're going to do. He said, just close it. And I'm like, really? But it was a perfect plan because I was able to move all my staff from my private practice over to Apparo. So we immediately had a billing staff and an authorization staff and therapists, and we came with 100 children who were already getting therapy. So we literally opened our doors in July of 2019 with earned revenue. So we never went into the negative. I mean, what business does that, especially a nonprofit?
I was going to say, what nonprofit does that?
So it was just a blessing that I would not have really even thought of. But, you look back over your life and you go, God's done all of these things in my life to lead me to this point. And, running my own practice, running the nonprofit, having a mindset of a therapist, but also having a background as an educator, all those things came together to create the ability to start Apparo.
It's funny. I was talking to a young lady the other day about some of the good things going on in my career right now, but she said that her boss asked her, what can I pray for you today? And she said, you can pray for me to have faith, have patience. And she said, I don't know about that. You might want to be careful with the patience prayer, because if you pray for patience, God will give you plenty of stuff to wait on. And so you definitely showed patience throughout the whole process. But John, so you're the chairman of the board, but obviously John Stewart, our friend, got you involved. But how did you really get involved? And you've jumped in with both feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
It's hard not to, first of all, when you meet Jennifer. You've been around, especially the nonprofit world, a lot. Yeah. And when you find somebody that not only is so passionate and so driven, but also knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I like you get asked to be involved with a lot of different great organizations. And around Augusta in our community, we have so many wonderful organizations. And sometimes people say, what, another nonprofit?
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that really interested me when Jennifer and I first met, we first met at the current building, right? So on Skinner Mill Road, which we've just made, a big addition to, but that original building was pretty small. And like Jennifer said, it was very much set up as a daycare, including a lot of the equipment that we sort of got almost for free. And when you went and walked around it with Jennifer, you could see the need. You could see they had a great core group of people. She had a great core group of board members, and already almost a foundation of fundraising. But as soon as she started talking about what they were going to be doing in the need, and then you kind of do your research, just like Jennifer said. Basically, I think on the spot while we were there, I said, I want to be involved. And, sometimes I'm really bad about saying no. But this was something that was very easy to say yes to, because not only did you have somebody that was passionate in Jennifer, but also you could see the business case.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people in nonprofits, you just look at the mission, which is critically important, but you also have to look at the business case. Like, is this sustainable? And a lot of what I've done as our board chair, a lot of the time is fundraising. And especially in the beginning, because we're trying to build things and grow things and get things established. And when you do that, people love a mission, but they can really not only give once, but continue to make it a part of their family's giving over time if they know that it's not just dependent on them.
Yeah.
And that revenue model that Jennifer mentioned to me was just so revolutionary. I thought it was just really cool because, 70 to 75% of our budget, we can really handle by private billing for the therapy services that the school provides. So yes, it's a school / daycare / early learning center / therapy clinic / doctor's office.
Yeah.
And so you're able to kind of create a revenue base from day one to where if you look at everything that's provided to the school through all of those different mechanisms, in the end, you're really no different than any other private school. You have gaps in tuition and maybe gaps in payment for therapy, but that was just as appealing to me, the fact that you had almost what is a self-sustaining nonprofit on top of an incredible mission, on top of a killer executive director. It was really sort of, kind of the perfect storm. And so it did not take me long, at least, to see all of those things. And, I thought that what I could bring was sort of a connection to the community. And like Jennifer said, the board needed to change a little bit from, hey, let's raise money to pay for therapy, to, hey, guys, we got to run a business.
Yeah. Well, and that I've often said that basically a vision without a business plan is a pipe dream. Yep. And you do so. I've ran a nonprofit for 4 years. I've served on the boards of many, but it's unfortunate to see so many nonprofits that are basically raising funds to keep the doors open. Mm. So one of my goals in office and out has always been to develop Augusta into a model city for others to learn from. And I think so. I am sure with Apparo that you're getting inquiries, from other cities and other communities. Hey guys, how have you done this? And usually, to me, when you've got a success, in most things, there's no pride of authorship because you're in it to help the kids here. But if you can help kids in other communities, you want to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And, and that helped us get started because there's an amazing school in Gainesville, Georgia, that I actually heard about from another person when I was going and trying to raise money to open this school. She said, well, hey, did you know there was a school in Gainesville, Georgia like this? And I'm like, no. And the reason is because they had just changed their name. So anytime you were searching for them, it wouldn't pop up. But their executive director, who was there at the time, and their program's called SISU. It's spelled SISU. It's in Gainesville, Georgia. They had been around 35 years. And she was just open door, open book. What do you need to know? And I went to their facility so many times to, one, look at how their building was built. What do they have? And I asked them, what do you not like? What would you not have in here if you couldn't have it? And they're like, carpet. And like, what would you have if you could have it? And I asked them all the questions to help with the design of our building. And she was just open book. And some of the people who worked with her said, why are you telling them everything? And she had that mentality of, I'm in this to help children. Yeah. And if she's going to help more children, why wouldn't I tell her everything I know and just be an open book? And so they were influential in really helping us to get our doors opened and to know what I was doing. I mean, I had to write all the policies for the school and all of that stuff and knowing very little about it. And so they were huge helpers with helping me to get all that stuff together.
Well, John, talk a little bit about the types of kids that Apparo serves.
Yeah, so I mean, it's everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is when we were sort of again doing sort of our business case to open the school, the school in Gainesville has 300.
They have 200.
200.
Well, they've decreased it since COVID. So they realized through COVID restrictions of making the rooms smaller that it actually worked better. So they've gone from having 200 to 150 now.
Yeah, and so, when we started the school, we had maybe 30 to 35. And Augusta's how much bigger than Gainesville?
Yeah.
So, when you really look at how many kids you serve, there could be multiple Apparos even in our own area. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of people say, well, how big are you guys going to get? And when we expanded and opened our new building, recently, we decided to go younger.
Uh-huh.
Because if you can intervene in those children's lives, the earlier you can, the more likely they are to be able to, have bigger gains earlier and sustain those gains as they get older. And so, our goal is to be inclusive, right? So I think a lot of people locally think of Apparo as a school for children with special needs, which it is. Mm-hmm. But, what does special needs mean?
Yeah.
And I think that spectrum is so wide that it's any child, from maybe a child that has autism, a child that's deaf, a child that has cerebral palsy, a child that maybe has a learning disability. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is meant to come to Apparo the whole time. There may be a child that just needs a year, and after getting a year of therapy every single day, kids are making enormous gains. Mm-hmm. And the first thing we noticed too, we opened, is we need to be open year round. Right, you can't be a regular school year, because if you're closed and those kids can't get therapy for 2 or 3 months, you've just undone all the other 9 months. And so we try to have a ratio of 60 to 40, 60% special needs, 40% what we call typically developing kids, right? And that model is critical because, for your special needs kids, they see their peers who are neurotypical, and they can see, okay, these are the behaviors that sort of we're working towards, right? And for those kids that are neurotypical, we have people sometimes ask us, why would I enroll my child in that? I mean, we have seen they have learned leadership, empathy, I mean, they can see that, the world is filled with all different kinds of people at an age where they're, much more open to that than all of us who have hardened our hearts, over time and gotten older and grumpier. So that dynamic is great. And Jennifer says this, which is just, I think the coolest thing is we have an adaptive playground. And, having therapy as a child is not fun, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of strain. And when we can give them therapy like on an environment like on a playground, the goal should be that you should be able to walk onto our playground and you're not able to immediately tell which kid is my special needs child, which child is my neurotypical child. And even having, 2 kids of my own, I mean, all children have, quirks and different things, and so who's neurotypical and who's not, I think is part of a larger conversation. But at Apparo, if you're serving all of those children, that's not really the distinction is not the important part. It's on how can each child be made ready for the next step in life.
I would say that our broader-based community and our nation can learn through your commitment to diversity and inclusion. And going back to it being a faith-based organization, I've always said that, we're in the Bible, we're told commanded, not told to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that doesn't say your rich neighbor, your poor neighbor, your black neighbor, your white neighbor, your child with that's challenged in any way. That's everybody. And I think that is what I see when I look at Apparo. It's a beautiful commitment to diversity and inclusion, but you're taking in kids from all walks of life. And that's, to my mind, that's the power of community.
Well, and what's beautiful to me is when the kids come in and they fall underneath our category of special needs where they need therapy services. And then when they're in the older classrooms, they're now one of our typically developing because they no longer need therapy. Yep. And we have children who started with us our first year in 2019 who are in our oldest classroom this year who are our typically developing kids. And their language is just huge. And we've brought in new teachers because we've expanded. We've doubled our classrooms this year. And one of the teachers, she's like, wow, his language is amazing. And I'm like, would you believe this is how he started? And she's like, it's just mind blowing. Yeah. And it's, I had a dream, right? I had a dream of what it was going to do. And it's far surpassed even that because it's just that matter of daily therapy and daily just enriching their language and in doing things because, parents are tired.
Oh, yeah.
Parents mean well, but when you get home from work and you bring your kids home and you've got to do dinner and you got homework with your other kids, you're not doing the therapy. You're not carrying over therapy. So it has to be done all day, every day at school. And unfortunately, when they get to older ages in the public schools, it's a 30-minute session with 2 other kids pulled out of the classroom, taken down the hallway or to a portable. The teachers rarely even know what you did in therapy. And so it's not carried over. It's basically checking the box saying we're doing therapy, but it's not getting carried over.
And John, I want to go back to something that you said, you made reference to, that how do you define special needs? So my wife had a sister, Catherine, my wife, Melissa, who was special needs. We lost her 3 years ago. She would have turned 60 last Sunday, but Melissa was her primary caregiver for pretty much Melissa's adult life. But it was very hard, and I go back to the diversity and inclusion, to find some place to put her where she fit in. It was just a constant struggle because nobody could really define exactly what was wrong with her. So for you guys to provide for kids, all types of kids, this place where they can feel like they fit in at that young age is so important.
Yeah, and I think Jennifer said it earlier, it's not just the child, it's also the family.
Yeah.
My wife's brother has Klinefelter syndrome, and it's a very rare chronological disorder. Mm-hmm. And when he was growing up, he went to the Augusta School, which was based, at the bottom of the Bon Air, and you sort of aged out of that. And the only place that he could go to get what he needed was in Boston. Mm-hmm. And so that's where he went for 5, 6, 7 years. And so, when Susie and I moved back to Augusta, nothing had changed. Yeah. The options, that was 20 years, 25 years went by, and the Augusta School is no longer there. And so you have less options.
Yeah.
And so, I think going back to what you said, Deke, I think that's so true. I mean, in my opinion, one of the strongest cases for Apparo is, what does it say about our community if we can't meet this need?
Yep.
Right? We all know and want Augusta and the surrounding area to be what we all know it can be. We've always heard about Augusta's potential.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, how do you realize that potential? Well, it's not necessarily through, trying to get the government to change or whatever else.
Yeah.
It's individuals saying, there is a need. I'm going to work my tail off to try and meet that need. And so I think the Apparo is one of those stories. And again, to see like in our own family and seeing Susie's family, that's a lot on the family as well, especially when you don't have something that's very rarely is there a clear, concise diagnosis and here's sort of a silver bullet medication that will change your child's life. That's unfortunately, in most cases, not the way our world works. And so it's a constant continuum level of care provided throughout the child's life. And again, if we're not meeting that at the outset, at the very beginning stage of life, what does that say about our community?
I agree with you completely. And it is, as I've said before, and I think before we came on air, that oftentimes we as a community, and I'm sure other cities are similar, can define themselves by, oh, we've got the most dysfunctional politics. And obviously, nationally, we've got dysfunctional politics, but I'm like, you can't define a community by its local government. It's defined by the people that live there and the people that join together to meet the needs. So that's, once again, Apparo to me is just a wonderful reflection of the power of the community here. But it's something, and I shared with you guys before coming on air, that, we're not geofenced to Augusta. There are people all over the world that listen to this podcast. And I'm sure that there are some people out there that have children that they wish they could meet the need in their own community. And my great hope is that they'll reach out to you guys and say, how'd you do it in Augusta? And just like the lady in Gainesville, I know you, Jennifer, and I know you, John, you're going to be like an open book. This is how we did it.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think one of the biggest thing is don't reinvent the wheel.
No.
If there's someone in your community who serves in that space, reach out to them. So one of the first things that we did before even opening the building was I went and spoke to Dr. Valera Hudson at the Children's Hospital. Because I said, I went to these other programs and they all had nurses, but it's a non-billable service. So I'm like, okay, so I have to have a nurse, but all it's going to do is suck money from my budget. So who has nurses in town that I could get a nurse from where it's not going to take money from my budget?
Yep.
And, it just so happens God put the people in charge that I had been working with in private practice for 20 years with referrals with kids that I'd been working with. And so I had that open door to be able to go speak with her. And Dr. Hudson got it. She said, yes, we need this school, and we've needed something like this for as long as I've been in this community, and we're going to step up and we're going to help you. And so the Children's Hospital of Georgia provided us from day one with a full-time registered nurse for our school that they pay for through philanthropic dollars, but she works at our school. And it's a collaboration with the Children's Hospital, and it helps us to not have that on our budget, but it also helps these kids because she sees these kids every single day, and she's able to find things when they're starting to get sick before their pediatrician would ever see it, because she knows their medical. She knows how they behave on a daily basis. And I can't count the number of children each year that she staves off pretty serious injuries and issues by calling directly and saying this kid needs to be admitted, or a child that's just had a seizure and the parent can still drive to school and doesn't have to go sit in an ER to see if the kid's okay. There's just so many huge benefits to having that collaboration in our school. And then we have other collaborations where we work with other nonprofits to say, hey, do y'all want to help provide this? And do you want to help provide this? To where we're collaborating with each other and we're becoming more of a team, instead of another nonprofit that's popped up to where everybody looks at you like you're sucking money from the grant they could have received. Yeah.
Well, and John, I want to get your take on this. I think the efforts of Apparo really are a true reflection of altruism and doing for others as opposed to doing for and not for yourself. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think that's a motto that I try to live by. And like Jennifer said, I think, how do you measure success at a place like Apparo? And I think there are a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I think about it is our goal is to be a resource for the community. You know, Jennifer mentioned it. I mean, you know, not only is that partnership with AU helping our kids and their families in our school, it's also helping AU, right? Because they're able to bring in nurses to train and pediatric fellows to come in and train with children with special needs. There was not an environment for them to do that. And so what does that mean? It means that our area already has a huge need for more pediatricians that work with children with special needs. There's a need for therapists and nurses, all of whom want to work with children. There was nowhere before Apparo for them to go and get that proper training. And so, you know, one of the great things I remember is, you know, the whole idea is that, you know, a good bit of our children sort of get that diagnosis around age 3, because that's when parents are saying, okay, there's something a little bit different. You know, I'm able to see my child with their peers. Something maybe isn't right here. And so, you know, I know one of the scariest things for a parent has to be, what do I do when I get that diagnosis?
Yeah.
There's no real clear way from the state government or for your physician as to what can I do? What are the steps I need to take? What resources, whether it's people, time, or financial resources, are available to me? And so what I love is you know, not only do I and the rest of our board members and so many people around Apparo help the school, but in helping the school become a community resource, we're helping all of these different people, many of which who may never step foot in the school's doors. So a great example is Jennifer had a wonderful idea. It was very important for us to have our own social worker. And that social worker, anybody in our community can call and talk to that social worker, and they will help them get the resources they need for that child, regardless of whether or not that child ever enrolls at Apparo. So, you know, I think it's like anything else, like you said, Deke, if you just start, right?
Yep.
Jennifer had a vision. She knew she could accomplish it, right? She didn't maybe know exactly what steps 9, 10, and 11 were going to be, but she knew what steps 1 and 2 were. And as soon as she starts, again, trying to think about all these other people, it just has blossomed into this thing that I don't think anyone could know or control. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And so if you have that mindset of, I'm not just doing this for myself, I'm doing it for other people, you attract other people that have that same mindset, and it just grows and grows and grows to hopefully being a resource for the community, which is ultimately, I think, what we want Apparo to be.
Well, and I come back to good leadership. I think good leadership is always looking at the big picture, not what's immediately directly in front of your face all the time and making those decisions. And you guys obviously get it. I did a TEDx talk a number of years ago called Cities Where All Things Connect. And I made the point that if we should view cities and communities like an organism. And if one part of the community is not healthy, it impacts adversely the rest of the community. So if you've got, you know, neighborhoods that are just in a shambles, that's a drag on resources. So I love the holistic view that you guys are taking with this. And I hope people are learning from this today that that's the way things work best. But you guys, I want to get to a couple things before I ask you my final question of the day as we wind up. But you've got an event coming up. I think it probably will happen the day that this airs, but if you could tell our listeners and our viewers about that.
Well, John alluded to that we have added a 16,000 square foot building, which is amazing. It gives us the ability to go from 3 classrooms to 10 classrooms. You know, when we opened the school, we all agreed that we needed to start small so we could prove the concept, so we could educate the community on the need, and so where we could get the donors behind us. And then we, 2 years in, stepped into a capital campaign and raised the money to build a 16,000 square foot building, which now will house our 10 classrooms and all of our admin offices. The building we were in previously, the original building, it's currently about finished with renovations, and it will be a 5,000 square foot outpatient therapy facility with a therapy pool, which we're super excited about. So on Monday, the 28th at 12 o'clock, we have our ribbon cutting for both of these buildings, and we are just ecstatic. It's kind of surreal. Pinch me. But we're super excited to show the community what we have, the resources that are there, physicians, just everybody to know that we exist. Because like I said before, we really have not done any marketing. And that's because we have a waiting list for the school, and we don't like turning families away that think this is where they need to be. And then we have to tell them, well, we have a waiting list. But the other waiting lists that exist in town are children who are sitting on outpatient therapy waiting lists, waiting for months just to get speech therapy or occupational or physical therapy. And so by opening up this 5,000 square feet and hiring more therapists, we can hopefully also put a dent in that for our community and help out on that too. So we're super excited.
Well, as I say, I'm hoping that there are listeners out there that are saying, we need one of these, but where can people find you guys?
So we're on Skinner Mill Road in Augusta, Georgia, but if they want more information, our website's apparoacademy.org. And through that website, they can email me, they can call our offices, they can come for a tour. We love to give tours. We love to show off what God's done for us, and we love to help them know how to do it in their community as well.
Yeah, and I would say too, it's one of these things that you have to see it.
Yeah.
You really do. It's fun to talk about, but until you can go in and see all of the things that are happening in that building every single day, it's the kind of thing that sticks with you. And, we had this large capital campaign, and, it's just remarkable that, 90% of the millions of dollars that we've raised all came from our local community.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that just shows to other communities out there that if you can prove the concept, and if you're, sort of taking the right steps, there are people who are willing to stand behind it. And you talk to our donors, and it's the coolest thing. You ask them why. Why did this move your heart, or why did you feel compelled to give? It's because they say how tangible it is.
Yep.
It's one of the few things that you can give. And I can go and watch one child, who 2-3 years, it changes their life right here in our community. Yeah. There are very few things, at least in the nonprofit world, that you can give so directly to and see that tangible benefit. Yeah.
Well, and that's, it's hard to sell vision, but you guys have built a concrete vision. So I would love for people from outside the area to contact you, Jennifer, and to come see.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, my last question I'd like to ask my guests, and I'll do ladies first. So, Jennifer, on a daily basis, what brings a smile to your face and puts joy in your heart?
Well, I would say before Apparo, it was my family. Just waking up and seeing my kids. My husband and I have adopted 5 children with special needs, and just waking up and seeing that they live in a loving home, and they have an opportunity to go to school and to learn and have everything at their disposal that they would never have had, and that God made that connection. Now at Apparo, it's just a joy to go to work every day and see these parents who are just boundlessly joyful walking into school and leaving their children there, knowing their children are fully cared for, and that they're going to come pick them up in the afternoon, knowing their children had an amazing day of therapy and play and were included with children of all different types. That brings me great joy.
Yeah, that's hard to top. I'm sorry to go second. No, I think, one of the things that I've tried to focus on is, we're all busy, and there's so many different things that sort of command our attention, and I think we've allowed technology to do that.
Yep.
And I know this is going to probably maybe the most cliche answer you've ever gotten to this, but I think for me is a daily, sometimes hourly battle to stay present. Mm-hmm. And, my wife and I have talked a lot. Our 2 boys are 8 and 5. And they're in kind of a sweet spot right now where, they're old enough to not be in diapers, but they're not old enough yet to, really be super mean to us all the time, And
but so that's coming.
It's coming. And so, anybody, other parents that we talk to say, enjoy this time. And so I think, when I really take a few steps back to say, this is a neat time in the life of our family, that's what brings a smile to my face. And then I'll also say this too, selfishly, I continue to be involved at Apparo because it gives me energy.
Yeah.
There are days where Jennifer and I, we give a lot of tours to people because, again, you got to kind of see it to understand it. And if I've had a rough day or, something didn't go right at work or, I was just kind of stressed out for whatever reason, you go and you see the power that one person can have on someone else.
Yep.
As you're watching a therapist work with a child, it gives you a sense of hope and perspective that I think is really rare in these days. So that's another reason for people to come see it. But for me personally, I always leave Apparo with so much more energy than I did when I went there.
Well, guys, I will tell you, thank you for your inspirational leadership for our community, but for other communities as well. And I know that this is going to help other communities, and thank you for being awesome guests too. But reminding our listeners, our viewers, subscribe and rate. And I believe that's about all we have. So we are dropping the mic and we are out.